All right. So, Scott, super kind of curious. Before we begin our conversation, uh, just for the sake of those that are listening, a little bit about your career in the military. Like, first of all, what got you in the military? What led
Yeah.
to that? And then what did you do?
Yeah, no, great question. So I spent 21 years in the Navy. I think really, ever since I was a young child, I think I've been motivated by service. And of course, I was
Mm.
influenced by media. I mean, I grew up in the age of Top Gun. So with that, I ended up going
Yes.
into naval aviation. Not as sexy as Maverick, but I was a helicopter pilot for 21 years. And yeah, I mean, ultimately, I was and still am very much motivated by service to the community.
To the amount of
Did you?
people that have said Top Gun, like from
Oh, I
from our
know, it's
generation,
crazy.
right? It's like,
Yeah,
right, and
yeah,
then like just that whole time period was just so many movies that were like that, and
yeah,
it's hilarious to hear that come out because I'm like, yeah, that's
yeah.
Dude,
exactly
that
how I felt when I jumped off my skateboard, and I was like, whoa, like
That's right.
that might be a thing in my future.
that theme song is still hit. It still slaps, man. When you hear it, you're
Yeah,
like, oh yeah, you get all fired up.
yeah,
For
Top
sure.
Gun theme song. Did you know, Scott, like that you were going to do 21? Like, I don't know. I
yeah,
mean, I don't know
right.
too many people that know I'm doing
No.
20, but
Oh no. Yeah. I don't leave that impression. Actually, I honestly I thought I would go to school, get my degree, and then punch out at the first
Mm,
opportunity. But what I just found is I found community. I felt like
mm.
I was working with a lot of people I enjoyed, and as every veteran could relate, I mean, go through a lot of difficult and challenging times, but I really just loved the community, loved the people I was working with, and that's really what kept me around. I think 21 years.
Mm. What
yeah, I
what
hear
bird
you.
you fly, by the way?
Oh yeah, so dated myself a little bit. I
That's all right.
flew in the H-46s, and
Oh,
then
Okay.
nice.
the H-3. So if you want to go see that over the Midway, you can go check them out.
Yeah,
And then I finished
Midway
out.
Museum.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
yeah,
So it tells you
yeah.
a little bit about my
Yeah,
time.
and literally,
They're on the Midway.
like the plate on the inside probably reads like circa 1970 something.
Yeah, actually the 60s. Some of them I flew. They're that old.
Dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a lot of bad and good memories of the old 46. So
Me
yeah,
too.
yeah.
Hey Scott. So what year did you actually punch out, like finish?
So it was 2018.
Okay.
I finished here in San Diego. Yeah.
And what decision or what led to that decision?
Mm,
Was it just your time, or what do you think drove that point to that point?
Yeah, I think it was just a kind of a confluence of events. I'd landed back in San Diego, which I'd always kind of wanted to get back here. It'd been a great career, but I was also looking. I was already kind of thinking ahead to the next steps, and it was like a good opportunity. San Diego, I had a great job, and the job had the flexibility that could like help me transition. So I saw the opportunity. I like all of you've had many addresses. I was kind of done with moving again as well. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
yeah, once I got to San Diego and I was asked to move again, that was a hard decision point for the Halterman family. Yeah,
Yeah.
Dude, there's so many people that refuse to leave San Diego's. I mean, it's got the best weather, dude. We're so spoiled out here,
yeah,
man.
For
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I get it. I get it. So Scott, really, one of the reasons that we brought you here is because you have a really cool story. I mean, the
Hmm.
more Halty and I talk to folks with military backgrounds, the stories that got them in the military is fascinating for various reasons. And then, but what really catches our ear is the transition story out.
Yep.
And so thinking about you making the decision to leave, and maybe that was in 2016, maybe a little bit earlier before the
Hmm.
actual time. Describe your mindset as you approached the transition.
Yeah. I'd been thinking about it quite a bit. As I mentioned earlier, service was really important for me. I wanted to make sure I went into an area that I felt like I was going to continue to be of service. So there's that. And then there's that part of you is like, hey, I got to get a job, right? And I need to get on this. And when I started looking, I really didn't spend much time thinking other than like what was on my resume, who was I as a person as captured on this resume, and then trying to map that to like what potential careers could I have. And I mean, I worked really hard at that, and I'm sure you've probably heard many of the same stories, like, hey, project management, program management, like all that kind of stuff. And I really only thought about it from that standpoint. And I was laser focused. I knew there was a lot of resources out there, and I tried to take advantage of all of them that were out there to make sure that, like, okay, I could hit the ground running, right? And like, here's this 21-year career, man. I'm gonna like take my terminal leave, and I'm gonna like kill it right out the gate, you know. So that was kind of my mindset coming out of the military.
I just appreciate that you tried to use as many assets and things as possible, right? There's so many VSOs out there doing great work, and the ongoing theme that I'll continue to beat the drum about is like, you get to as many of them as possible, and it doesn't matter your rank or how many years you're served. You're not stealing another younger soldier, sailor, airman, marine, guardians spot, right? There's spots for everybody, and it's super important that the mantra I always try and send out is don't transition alone. And the more assets you use, the better your transition is likely to go. So it's great to hear you did that.
Yeah, 100%. And it was maybe one of the VSOs, but I really did reach out to my veteran network. I was on LinkedIn trying to network with as many people as I can, have as many conversations as I could. And quite frankly, if it wasn't for those conversations, I wouldn't have landed in my first job. I mean, it was another veteran that got me in the door.
Mm-hmm. It's really the relationships, right? I think that's something that we know, the powerful network of being in the military. And that's a good resource to definitely use. I kind of want to go back a little bit to your thoughts of seeing what you were good at in the military and seeing how it translates. That's kind of a thing that I think I did. I know I did. Halty, I'm sure you did too, because it's what we're taught by these awesome veteran service organizations. Hey, let's look at your career and translate that skill, almost like, hey, this is project management. This is dealing with supply chain. This is dealing with budgets. And it's very like almost linear. Right. Did you go through the same process too to kind of?
100%. I took that same sort of mindset. It was basically like an inventory. Like, here's all the range of jobs and activities I've been involved in over 21 years. And then here's the industry. Like I said, I knew I wanted to be in a industry that was going to make a difference. And then, here's the jobs that potentially match up to those two.
Yeah. And so I appreciate that. And so that got you in the job. And now let's just flash forward a little bit. So now you're in the job.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there, and I don't want to put you in a cubicle. I don't want to put, I don't know what kind of environment it was, but describe that for us. Maybe the first like 30 days, 90 days. What was that like?
That was it. Yeah. The first few days were interesting. I'd actually joined a team that was 100% remote. And I always like to tell the story. It was my first day. It was Monday, and I'd been told I was going to receive my laptop. And I show up Monday, and I'm like, there's no laptop. And I text my hiring manager, and I said, there's no laptop. I was like, you know what? I'm just go to the office, and I'm going to go shake someone down and get a laptop. So, initiative, like all those things that we do as veterans, like we're resourceful, we'll get things done. So it was my first day on the job. I'm like getting in my car, driving not too far up north of here, and just knocking on. I don't even have a badge. I'm like, hey, I just started. I need a laptop.
Where's my stuff?
And a great person helped me out and got me all set up that day. So that was my first day on the job. I joined it was an exciting team. They were trying to scale in the delivery of software safety devices in the healthcare industry. And knowing that I was going to work for a team that was, pushing this new product out, it was exciting. It had the feel of like, hey, this is going to be somewhat startup-ish, right? and trying to get a new product to scale. It was had a great management team that I worked with, but it was very, 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 very fast-paced right out the gate. Yeah.
That's interesting. Fast pace is something that I don't often hear too much, but if it's kind of a startup mentality, then that makes sense.
Yeah.
I've known, Halty, I know you and we've had conversations with hundreds of veterans, and describing their first job, sometimes it's like getting off the bullet train of the military into a slower paced environment where things don't happen as fast. So that's interesting. It's a little bit different, but I hear you, Scott.
Yeah, it was a little bit, it was different because it was like a relatively newly acquired line of products to a big company. So it had elements of both fast, but also like slower, big organization. So it was a little, we were a unique group, I would say, within the larger company.
So when you made the choice to choose that job, was it the role, the description, or was it a little bit of understanding of maybe the connection of the person that connected you to that group, or what were the things that drew you to it that said this is it?
It was really it was very operations heavy focused, scheduling, implementation teams throughout the country, operations, something we've all done. So it was really that. It was like the light bulb went like, okay, this is great. I've done it. I've brought together teams. I've scheduled them across the country. Worked with people all over the world, not just the United States, and it just seemed like kind of a perfect fit for my kind of operations background.
And then I'm always curious because we see you just described it. I've done operations and now I see an operations title and it all makes sense. But if you could maybe talk through some of the cultural, some of the things that were culturally the same, but some of the things that were culturally different. And it's like, oh, wait, this is business operations, and talk about through some of the differences or anything you got.
I mean, I think some, in the military, we definitely have some pretty mature operational processes in place, right? This team was growing, was scaling, and didn't have quite a bit. So it was, we had frequently, on the management team, we'd like to frequently we're kind of building the plane and flying at the same time, right? We had this aggressive revenue target. We need to hire a bunch of people. We also need to refine the processes and make sure we're implementing things a bit faster. So we stayed pretty busy, and I think that's when I refer to like it being kind of like going from pretty fast paced job right into another fast paced job.
Makes sense. Yeah. Did now what's interesting is what kind of brought you to the podcast literally is I made a post on LinkedIn last week.
That's right.
And the post was referring to the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the data from October 2024 comparing veterans in jobs and civilians with no military background in jobs and finding work. And the military veterans are actually doing better. And so my question was, that sounds great. So we have all these organizations, VSOs, that are helping veterans find jobs. We're doing the work. We're writing the resumes. We're making connections. We're doing those things. But I'm wondering how many veterans are finding like fulfillment, connection, and belonging. Now, that isn't something that's kind of on a job description,
right?
Nor is it, at least in my mind, when I was looking for work, I'm looking for connection, and no, I need a paycheck. I need it to be in the right location. I need these things, and that's like the surface needs. But I was wondering, like, what are the jobs like for folks once they're in? And you chimed in, and I know I gotta ask you, man, Scott, like, what was your response to my question?
I mean, I think what we've built into is I think I maybe I was the poster child of doing all the right things to check the boxes to get into that first role. But over time, I found, I just the connection just wasn't there, kind of to what you're talking about, trying to tap into not just like, hey, what can I do, but what do I really find that's like meaningful, and that was kind of fast-paced environment, and over time, having not reflected on that, it really did become quite a bit of a grind after a while. And I'd spent, I kept telling myself, I just suck it up, man. Like, you got this. Like, you got a job. Like, you've got to do worse. You've worked yeah, you've worked in worse conditions than this. How bad? I mean, you got a laptop at home. How fucking bad is this?
You
Right?
don't
Like, what do
smell like aircraft fuel right now. You're fine.
You're
Yeah,
sleeping on your pillow tonight, bro.
exactly.
Yeah.
And I told myself that like for years, but
Oh.
all the while there was, you know, this other context that was going on. I had 4 different directors. After 3.5 years, I was the only manager standing after all these managers had come and gone and just were burnt out and frustrated. Attrition. And I just like, it just got to a point that, you know, I gotta rethink this.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta rethink what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly, like at that point, like I really, I didn't know where to turn at that point, because they say, why am I complaining? I got this great job, but at the same time, I'm just feeling, you know, I mean, it's not the same as I was doing an operations job, either back in a squadron or deployed, you know, there's just something else missing. Yeah.
You know, what's different is like in the military, when we say suck it up, I kind of want to say that there's a different context there, because you look to your left and your right, and that's why you suck it up.
That's right. 100%.
You don't want to let anybody down, and you don't want to be the weak link. And so you're like, man, I just need to put my head down and grind like everybody else. Right. And so it's almost like, okay to just suck it up. That doesn't mean we're pushovers by any means, you know what I mean? Yeah. But you know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. And when you said that, what made me think is, and I know I told you that story, is like people were leaving. There was like, they weren't standing shoulder to shoulder with me because we were going through a difficult time together, and I'm not going to let down the person on the left and right. It's like, man, I'm in it for me, man. This is right. I'm not gonna stick around in a bad situation any longer than I have to. Right.
Right.
And I still had that mindset. Like, I'm here for the team. I'm here for, you know, my consultants who are on my team. And I mean, that I got that did keep me around, but like kind of a lot of everyone around me was leaving. And one of my takeaways I just want to share is you could walk away at some point. Well, hopefully, you know,
what?
You don't exactly. You don't have to stay in that first job for as long as I did 3.5 years.
There's no 4-year contract that you had to take an oath for and sign a paper.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah.
You heard it first. You can leave.
But to balance that just a little bit, and look, everything Scott is saying is on the money. Like Joe and I have had the absolute privilege to talk to probably closer to thousands of veterans at this point.
Easily.
And to balance that opinion just a little bit, it's worth sticking around for about 24 months so that you can leverage the experience of it into the next thing, right? Because the best time to get a job is while you have a job. So don't sit idly feeling like you're stuck in it. Go, oh, okay, I'm feeling what Scott said. Therefore, I'm leaving. I need to leave, but build my plan, right?
Yes.
And then where am I on this journey? Okay, let me make sure this is a resume bullet that I can speak well to and positively of, so that I can get to the next thing. And while I'm here, still grinding away, being the best teammate I can be under present conditions, I'm going to spend some time on LinkedIn. I'm going to spend some time re-engaging my network and looking for next opportunity, right? That's the best practice, I would say, in making it
100%.
really clean professional exit.
100%.
Oh, yes. You nailed it. And so to that point, Scott, like what did you mentioned, you know, we started talking about Vector Accelerator a little bit offline, which is this program that's been designed for veterans. We know there's a lot of active duty that are getting out every year. And so we created this course for them, also knowing that there's going to be people that have already transitioned from active duty that are in jobs. And so this curriculum, the questions that we ask veterans are timeless questions. They can be asked to anyone at any point in their career, whether they're active duty or not. You stumbled upon Vector Accelerator at some point. How did that happen? First of all, how'd you find out about it? And was this part of your reflection in your search, or you know, as like I got to change something, or how did that happen?
I think at that point, you know, to your point, I was starting to look and try to find other opportunities. So spending some more time on LinkedIn. I believe I found the program on LinkedIn, and I just, let me follow this. Let me go down this rabbit hole a little bit. And I was really excited to find it. And and just right from the get-go, some of the questions that were being asked that were a little more reflective and really thinking about like values, right? And that was great for me. I think it's kind of funny. It's just sometimes things kind of find you when you need them most, and it was just through LinkedIn. And
isn't it crazy that phrase, when the student's ready, the teacher arrives?
That's right.
Seriously.
Yeah, and what's back to what Halty and I have done for so many years working with veterans, and we could speak to it because we went through it ourselves. Like, so we know what it's like to look for that checklist of things to transition, make sure my medical record's taken care of, and then also start prepping the resume. Just checklist, boom, 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 boom. I never once thought I needed to do a self-reflective values assessment, because I mean, I'm pretty confident, right? Like, I know who I am.
I know me.
Why am I spending time with this question? Like, I just need a job right now. And so it's very easy to kind of just brush it off as this is kind of a waste of time. This isn't transactional. It's not going to get me that job. So it's, I guess what I'm trying to get at is those that are listening that are curious about, what is Vector Accelerator? What is this thing? Because I'm not doing it right now. I'm just doing that checklist. What would be some advice, I guess, to go a little bit, just lead with curiosity and just kind of maybe open it and look through it and see if it can help. What are your thoughts on that, Scott?
Yeah. I don't know. There's that old saying that, any port will do, right? If you don't have a direction, right? And I think the values gives you that direction, right? That helps give you that focus, and I, like yourself, I didn't see this as like, it's funny. Sometimes you see veterans like, I'll build this project plan, to get to which is great, and it's a great way to keep you on track. But nowhere in that plan is like let me before I even start this project, let me really focus on self-reflection. The things that were really important to you, growing up or in the service. And that's what Vector Accelerator helped me. Those early modules where you're kind of focusing in on the values, and they're honestly, for me, they were like some of the hardest questions to answer. I mean, to me, the mapping of your skills to some job is like it's kind of like it gets almost algorithmic, right? But like the reflection piece is just, it's ongoing, and I would argue it's never really done. I mean, at the end of the day. But I'd wish, in hindsight, I'd started there, right? It may have changed things a little bit.
Yeah. What's fascinating is when you do those exercises, right? So, and you pulled out values, because there's a lot of many different exercises that are in Vector, but values is a really simple one that seems simple until you actually do the work, and then it's like, oh, this is pretty heavy. What's interesting is, in a simple exercise, I'll call it simple because when you look at the outcome, it could be very simple, in that you might very well find a team that's on paper looks exactly like what you just were in. But the difference is, if you value loyalty, if you value camaraderie, if you value tribe, let's just say those are examples, not necessarily yours, Scott, but if that's something, you're now looking for those things in addition to the salary and the culture. It's part of the equation of the work. So it's not just salary, location, title, and the role. Project management, startup, operations, logistics. That's good. But if you start adding your value as a layer over that, as a lens, you can now differentiate when you look at two companies doing the exact same thing, but how they do it. One of them's more aligned with who you are, and the other one just is way off base. Is that fair?
Yeah, 100%. I honestly, I never even considered that element in my early part of the job search. Right? It was like, I got to get a job. Let me check this box off. Right? I never considered those other factors that you talked about, and they really are important. I mean, it's the difference between waking up and just like you're just dreading, like opening up your laptop and getting to work versus, waking up and going, man, I'm actually kind of energized to work with these people today.
Totally.
Yeah.
And Joe, you gave such a good example, man. And once you kind of figure out your value system and what's really prioritized and important for you and your family, and the comparison between two companies, same product, maybe competitors in the same market, and then it gives you the opportunity, in the interview when they say, hey, do you have any questions for us? That's where you really get to nail it home about what's really important to you.
Yeah.
Like, hey, can you tell me the structure of the teams and who I'm going to be directly working for? And how is that structured? And what's the reporting look like? On the surface, those seem like very straightforward, tactical, maybe level questions. But the reality is that those answers can be wildly different. And you can start to tease out the threads of how that company operates. And is that going to be in line with the things that you're looking for? Because if I'm going to be fully remote and have 5 bosses, am I going to get camaraderie, tribe, and the other thing I'm looking for? Probably not, right? You could probably intuit that from a couple of good questions. So important for interview process and final decision making and all the rest.
Staying in that vein of interview questions. So it's so funny because I'm now past my military career. I'm in civilian life now, and I've hired people. Unfortunately, I've had to let people go.
Also scary.
But yes, I don't like that part. But but in the interview process, it's all like the first date. Like everybody's super well kept. Our answers are super prepped. It's all perfect. Even the company is like perfect. And we're trying to get accepted by that company. But on this same points that you just mentioned, Halty, if we're super clear on our values, our questions towards the company, right, can actually go up a level. Meaning, if I've done the work and I know, let's just say loyalty, camaraderie, stick-to-itiveness, all that stuff is important to me. Hey, describe to me some of the most difficult challenges, like a recent difficult struggle that this company went through, and not that you found success, but what was the environment like for the team? Did people dig in and get after it? Like, what's your impression of that? And just, I mean, why not ask that question? Because sometimes we're asked as people trying to get, careers, we're asked behavioral questions. How do you work under pressure and stress and all that? It's a conversation that should go both ways. And if they don't answer in a way that gives you the warm and fuzzy or that spidey sense, that could be a sign, right?
And it was a great, my first job was a great experience. And like yourselves, I had to hire a lot of people. And I was sometimes just blown away about the lack of questions I would get. And the job was hard. It was a challenging job. You had to get on the road like Monday, fly back Friday, lots of change. And I'd get so few questions. So I would kind of offer like, hey, this is what you're getting into. Like, I just want to give you a little bit of the background here, because it's I want you to, this is a challenging job. So, and I know you want it, and you're putting you're putting your best foot forward, but be aware what you're stepping into. And most people stuck around, so I think they appreciated it.
Yeah. Was there another aspect of Vector Accelerator or something else that kind of stuck out for you that you found helpful?
So you were right. I mean, connection was something I felt like I was missing in my last job. And one of the things that I liked about it is I jumped on those Thursday calls, sometimes just to listen in and listen, some of the challenges that other veterans were having, and just to share their stories. Someone who's worked largely remote for many years, I've become just a big fan of like, hey, let's just get on a call. Let's go talk about, let's see each other. So much of our work is digitally mediated through text and email and all that kind of stuff. And I really appreciated just being able to jump in on a Thursday call and talk through kind of the workbook as well. I think that kept me on track too, knowing that like, I've got I should probably make sure I do this section before I join the call on Wednesday or Thursday, whenever it was.
Halty, can you describe that a little bit? What's he talking about, the call? Because obviously we know, but we want our listeners to kind of get a feel for like
sure.
What is it?
Yeah. So Azimuth Chat right now, as of this recording, it's at noon Pacific Standard Time on Wednesdays. That's just right now. Certainly something that's going to change and expand and so on and so forth. So, look, when you're in the course, you have 10 chapters to get through, and it's deep introspective work. And when you're doing deep introspective work, guided journaling is super important, but at some point you got to get out of your own head, because as someone far smarter than me and probably a century ago said something to the effect of, you cannot understand yourself fully but through the reflection from others. And so getting out of your own head, even though you need to do that work, and having a good conversation with a Scott, a Joe, Lara, and all the other veterans who are in some variation of the exact same experience as you right now, right? They're in some form of the transition, whether it's second job or first opportunity coming out of the military, whatever that looks like. And then you get to have like kind of the back and forth, the tug and the pull, and a little bit of like, oh, I have a resource for that for you too, or here's what worked for me. And it helps you get out of your own head and maybe organize more succinctly the things that you can easily spin yourself up on. And someone can, like Scott, can step in and go, hey, brother, hey, sister, you're actually doing fine. I was there 2 months ago and I was able to work through that because ... Try that out. And it can make a real difference.
Yeah, you said it early on in this conversation, don't transition alone. And that is how you find success with Vector. I think with any transition process, if whether you use Vector or not, that early point you made, don't transition alone. We tried really hard to create this element of connection, at least once a week with other veterans, but also building a network outside of that military group. And that's how I found clarity. Because I know my brothers and sisters will get my back and they'll hold me accountable and all that. What I personally needed was to be pushed and made really uncomfortable outside of what was known, which is the military. And so I had a gentleman who was a business guy, never served active duty, but was a traditional get after it business dude, and really challenged me. And I couldn't get out of my own way, but he kept peeling my onion and asking me about my values and what makes me tick. And through storytelling, which is part of Vector Accelerator, is learning what your story is and how to articulate it. I got so much clarity from that. And that didn't translate to one conversation with this guy and I know what I meant to do. That's not what I'm trying to say. But it helped me lean forward in my journey. So now I'm leading with curiosity and a lot of momentum and excitement. I gotta say, I was really enjoying the process, even though there's anxiety of the job not there and all that. That's going to be there, but there's an excitement to it. And so the reflective questions, the meeting with other veterans, the building your network, I think those are the major components that make it successful. And so, Scott, to get back to you, brother, where are you at now? Like, what's your journey look like now? And also moving forward.
Yeah. Now, so I ended up moving over to a coaching consulting company that has a technology component to it. I think it's fair to say most of us have been in the military. Leadership is important to us, and both advancing our own practice, but helping others advance theirs as well. So I joined that company, worked for a couple months, and I'm also a part-time PhD student at University of San Diego, where I really want to focus on kind of leadership development in the context of like high reliability organizations and remote teams. So I really got back to something that had been nagging at me since I'd even transitioned, and I'd always thought that education and sharing a little bit with others is something that is just really important and meaningful to me. And I feel like I could gain better connections with people that way. So made a little bit of a career pivot over the last year. Yeah.
I love that. What's neat is you said two things. So it's a career and school, right? And Halty, I remember when I first met you and you were in your transition, it seemed like you wanted to do everything. And
Yeah,
that's kind of a natural feeling. But now I'm not encouraging you to go and do everything, but you don't have to settle for just like one career and that is it, and that's only you. Now, obviously it's time constraint. Everything's time constraint, but if you have a passion and if you want to serve and teach, I mean, serving on a nonprofit board while you work, or starting a company at nighttime because you have this entrepreneurial spirit while you do this other thing that provides the means to survive and live, but it's also thriving as well. You're not suffering. There's a lot you can do in this. You have so much freedom, and I think that's a weird transition to be in from the military, where you're giving your orders. You're literally handed orders from the government. Do this for so much time, right? Oof.
Yeah. I think you think about, like, most of us probably joined when we were maybe 18, 19 years old, right? And then you do 20 plus years. To exactly your point, Joe, it's like, here's your orders, and you go do it, and you'll do it the best you can. And now you've got all these options, this freedom that's available to you. And on your way out, you think you got it figured out, but I'm just going to say you probably don't. God bless you if you do. I mean, I'm a slow learner, so maybe it's just
all
me.
of us, man. All of us.
So this is parallel, I promise. It's not going to sound like it at first, but it's parallel. And my question or thought is, there's so much optionality in the transition, and one of the things that can get forgotten about is, what do you love or are passionate about completely outside the job? Like that thing that brings you pure joy, that thing that you will like, ooh, if I get up early and I go do this, then I can make room for this, whatever that is, right? And I mean, it can be knitting, it can be writing, it can be sailing, it can be ... right? Fill in the blank. Scott, what is yours? What is the thing that really, like, yes, I make time in my day? Or like, Halty, honestly, I haven't done that in a while and I need to, because I know it's good for me.
That's really good. And it's probably a habit I developed in the military. Was just some of it was just going to the gym, right?
Yeah.
As often as you can, or working out. But I think it's also just being outdoors with others, and it's two parts. It's like, the outdoors and nature and all that, but it's also just getting out there and having conversations with people, like interesting conversations, just hearing what's on their mind, and just sharing stories. I mean, that's I mean, I'm going to do that later today. We were talking before this earlier. I'm going to do some of that a little bit later today with some mountain biking.
Nice.
Yeah, one of the questions that we love to ask veterans is, the dream job scenario. If money is no object, what would you do? And if you don't take Vector Accelerator, or you're just curious about it, start with that question. Just write it down, like literally pen to paper. Write it down. You could walk away and then come back with a fresh perspective or fresh mind and look at that, and then try to fill it out. It starts off simple, but I think we sometimes rob ourselves initially of like, well, that's not realistic. I can't do that, or that. Why am I even doing this question? I remember having this question asked to me, and I played it safe, and I wasn't giving the real honest answer. And so I guess the reason why I'm mentioning this is, sometimes when you get these vulnerable questions and these inside Vector, it's you can kind of play it safe and not go deep. So what's the encouragement, I guess, from Scott and Halty, from you both, like to just go for it, like get lost in those questions and really start writing, really start thinking?
It's something and I don't know if I may have discovered it a little bit before Vector, was spending a few minutes every morning just journaling a little bit, like and just writing what comes to mind. And then you go back and kind of see what these recurrent themes are, whether or not it was just something that was cool about a day, or something that was a challenge. So for me, I think that helps, is to I would just encourage everyone to get in that practice, whether you do Vector Accelerator or not. But to help you go through the questions at Vector, just write down just a little bit every day, like what's on your mind. It's a good practice.
And you can do it free of any judgment whatsoever, because no one's going to check in on you. I'm never going to say, hey, show me what you wrote about question X. Like, that's never going to happen. And, you know, if you have a significant other, it doesn't have to be for them. And if you're thinking so much about your future you that you think you're writing it for them, you're not. You're just writing it for you in that moment right now. So it's completely free of judgment. And it just gives you an opportunity to, again, go back to all the stuff that's whirling around in your head, all of those options, and get them down succinctly so you can sort through it a little bit. And then you can open up with the parts you want to open up about and have a good conversation, and then sort through it with your spouse, your significant other, fellow veterans, whatever that looks like, so that it doesn't come out a jumbled mess like it does sometimes with me still.
Yeah. And so for those that are hearing the word journaling and maybe cringing a little bit, slow down. Let me give you some context here. So awesome, Scott, that you already had this practice built in.
Yeah.
I've done this numerous times with hundreds of veterans on day one of a transition program. And I've asked veterans, how many of you journal? And out of a room of 40 people, maybe one hand goes up. And their eyes are like, oh crap, here we go. And I'm like, hey, this is going to be easy in the sense that it's prompted journaling. It's not a blank page. So let me start with the question. And it'd be funny, like if I had a room of 40 folks right now and they're kind of worried, I'm like, okay, here's a question. Veterans, what pisses you off? And then just sit back and go, dude. And then everybody's like rubbing their hands, like, we got a hate circle coming. Here we go. You know,
10 pages later,
10 pages later, dude, I could write a book.
That's it.
You know, but seriously, like that's kind of what we want. That's the effect of what we want, is just, here's a question, just start writing, start thinking. And the more you write, the more authentic the words get. It's a weird thing that occurs. Cause like me, I was very surface. In fact, the first time I journaled, not gonna lie, I did it in pencil because I was afraid of what I was gonna write, dude. I was like, I can erase this, whatever. But then I started digging deep, and it's my thing now. And I still have it on a bookshelf. I still have it to this day, 2015. And it's what, going 2025 in a couple of months. It's crazy. I should go back and look at it, actually.
You should.
Just kind of see where my mind was at.
You should. There's good material in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scott,
that's
dude,
the other thing. Like you get to see your own growth. You've chronicled your own growth. And when you're like, where am I today? Like, I haven't done anything. Like, I haven't worked out in a week. Right. And you start the hate circles in your own head about you. No way. Not me. Not veterans. Not never. Okay. So when that happens, you can go back to your journal, even a week ago, a month ago, whatever. 2015, a decade, bro. That's a decade, by the way.
That's crazy.
You get to see like, look at this little aha moment I hit in June of 16. Wow, I really have grown. And the little negative voice in my head needs to hush, right? Stop being so tough on yourself. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Joe.
No, man. That was awesome, dude. So Scott, we're coming up on the top of the hour, man, for this, but just want to thank you first for your time and for sharing your story. And any words of encouragement for those that are going to stumble upon this podcast? What's your message to the veterans who are active duty, who are already transitioned? Like, what's your words?
I mean, I don't think you get much stronger without like meeting some resistance. And I think what you're talking about in terms of just reflecting, that's resistance. Just, man, you've already done this in your career or however long you spent as a veteran. Just lean into it, man. Just like start answering the questions. Like, it's going to be uncomfortable. Well, you've gotten used to being uncomfortable for a long time. So just lean into it. And I think it will pay its dividends down the road.
Great advice.
I love the way you said that. I've never heard it termed that way before. That's fantastic. Yeah.
So pretty soon we're going to call you Dr. Scott. I love it.
Well, it'll be a while, but
dude,
one of these days.
Sick. That's awesome.
Yes, dude, that makes it the instant feeling I got in the center of my chest was literally the warm and fuzzy to hear to hear someone saying, you know what, I'm going to go for this. Right. And I'm going to find a balance between, I'm going to get my mortgage paid. Got to find a job. I've got a job, and I'm going to pursue a higher education so that I can continue to give back to others, man. It just makes my heart warm. Yeah.
Well, thanks. Really enjoyed talking with you guys. I hope this does help. I just saw on the post and LinkedIn how this all got started. I really wanted to find some small way I could give back, because like Vector Accelerator was great for me. And I hope more people dive into Vector. And if you're a veteran and you're in transition, you want to connect with me, absolutely happy to have
Where's the best place to find you? Where's the best place to connect?
Probably on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Awesome. Scott, or what's the handle? Just so we capture it correctly.
Oh, geez. You caught me on that one.
That's all right. That's right.
I think it's search for your last name.
I think it's Scott Harvey. I think.
Okay.
Okay. You should find me.
Awesome. Great conversation,
dude. Thank you
boys.
so much. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah.
We'll come back again at another time, Halty, with maybe probably another really cool guest. And Scott, again, thank you so much for your time, dude. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Likewise.
That's a wrap. Hell yeah.